Welcome to Karen Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss a crazy story. Let's dive in. I should have known the day was going to go straight to hell the moment I saw her standing at the edge of my yard, arms crossed, mouth already pursed into that signature Karen scowl. It was a Saturday morning, the kind of morning that begged to be enjoyed. The sun was warm but not unbearable. The birds were chirping, and I was finally tackling a chore I'd been putting off for weeks, power washing my porch. Nothing dramatic, just a guy, a machine, and years of built-up grime getting blasted into oblivion. And yet, somehow, this was an issue. I didn't even notice her at first. I was mid-spray, watching decades of dirt peel away like magic, when I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. There she was, Karen, standing there like an angry HOA overlord, watching me like I'd personally offended her entire family tree. I sighed, already exhausted. Morning, Karen. Nothing. Not even a polite nod. Just the slow, judgmental shake of her head. Then, in the voice that every retail worker in America knows and fears, she said, "Do you really think that's appropriate?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" She sighed like I was the biggest disappointment of her entire life. "The power washer." She gestured vaguely at my hands. "It's loud, it's disruptive. It's completely inconsiderate to the community." I stared at her. Then at my power washer. Then back at her. "Karen, it's 10:30 in the morning. And I'm cleaning my own porch. On my own property." She let out a dramatic sigh, as if I were the most exhausting human being on the planet. Some of us are trying to enjoy a peaceful morning. Your little machine is ruining that. I bit back the urge to laugh. "It's a power washer, Karen. Not a chainsaw." She huffed. "You don't need to be so rude. I'm simply asking you to be respectful. People like you don't understand the value of peace and quiet." I clenched my jaw. "People like me? Karen, I am quite literally minding my own business." "No," she said, voice sharpening. "You're making a spectacle. What's next? Are you going to start working on your car in the driveway like some kind of—" She stopped herself, but the implication was clear. Oh, there it was. The barely veiled classist condescension. Karen, in all her self-righteous glory, didn't just see me as a neighbor, she saw me as a problem. An eyesore that somehow tainted the pristine suburban utopia she believed she ruled over. I exhaled slowly, forcing a smile. "I'll be done in an hour, Karen." Her lips thinned. "That's not the point. The point is that I shouldn't have to hear your noise pollution while I'm having my morning tea. Then go inside." Her eyes widened, as if I'd just suggested she jump into a pit of fire. Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said, turning back to my power washer. "If it bothers you that much, go inside." Problem solved. I barely got the machine started before I heard the unmistakable sound of a phone camera being activated. "Oh, for the love of, are you recording me?" I turned back around, and yep, there she was, holding her phone up like she was filming a damn expose. "I need proof of this harassment," she said, voice dripping with fake victimhood. "You're being incredibly aggressive." I threw my hands up. "Aggressive? Karen, I'm cleaning my damn house," she gasped. "Language." I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath and pointed at her phone. "You do realize that all this proves is that you're harassing me, right?" Her face twitched. She hadn't expected pushback. "This is a public safety concern," she said, a little too quickly. "Who knows what kind of chemicals you're spraying everywhere." Oh, she was really reaching now. I walked over to my porch, grabbed the bottle of cleaning solution, and held it up so she could read the label. "It's eco-friendly, non-toxic, and biodegradable." She squinted at the label, lips moving like she was searching for some fine print that would prove I was secretly poisoning the neighborhood. "This is unacceptable," she declared, lowering her phone. "I'm calling the HOA." I crossed my arms. "Karen, we don't have an HOA." That stopped her. Just for a second. But then, like a true agent of chaos, she regrouped. "Then I'll call the police." I let out a short, incredulous laugh. "The police? You're going to call the police? On me? For power washing?" She lifted her chin. "Ignore people." Oh, here we go. The Karen trump card. I exhaled sharply. "Karen, I'm going to finish cleaning my porch. Then I'm going inside and pretending this conversation never happened. And if you actually call the cops on me over this, I promise you, it's going to backfire." Her eyes narrowed. A challenge. A threat. A promise of absolute insanity to come. And I should have left it there. I should have walked away. But no, because I had underestimated just how far Karen was willing to take this. Because 20 minutes later, the cops actually showed up. I stood there, mouth slightly open, as two police officers stepped out of their patrol car. This was not happening. I actually glanced around for hidden cameras, half convinced I was being pranked. But nope. There they were, real uniforms, real badges, and the real sinking feeling in my stomach that my idiot neighbor had actually called the cops on me. And of course, standing proudly on her porch, phone in hand like she had just personally solved the biggest crime of the century, was Karen. The lead officer, a guy who looked like he had seen way too much nonsense in his career, sighed as he approached. "Sir, we received a complaint about a disturbance." I let out a dry laugh. "A disturbance?" I gestured to my power washer, still sitting peacefully on my porch. I was cleaning. Karen gasped so loudly that you would have thought I had just confessed to international war crimes. "Lies," she screeched, stomping down her steps toward the officers. He was threatening me, harassing me, using toxic chemicals in a residential area. She put a dramatic hand on her chest, shaking her head as if she were on the verge of fainting. I barely made it inside before the fumes overwhelmed me. The younger officer, who already looked beyond done, turned to me. "Sir, what exactly were you using?" Wordlessly, I picked up the eco-friendly, non-toxic, biodegradable cleaning solution and handed it to him. He squinted at the label, then turned to his partner. "Sarge, this is literally just soap." The lead officer sighed. "Yeah. Thought so." Karen let out a strangled noise. But the noise pollution, the aggression, the fury." He spoke to me. She turned on the waterworks, her voice trembling. I feared for my life out there. He was belligerent. Unhinged. I stared at her, genuinely speechless. The way she was performing, I half expected her to collapse into an Oscar-worthy faint right there on my lawn. The younger cop cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, do you have any actual evidence of this?" Her phone shot up so fast she nearly smacked herself in the face. "I recorded everything. Ick knew this would happen." She jabbed at her screen furiously before shoving it in the officer's face. "Watch. Just watch." We all waited as the video started playing. And then, oh my God, I nearly lost it. The footage was terrible. And I don't mean bad as in damning. I mean bad as in the most hilariously pathetic attempt at a setup I had ever seen. The camera was shaking violently, pointing more at the sky than at me. The audio was a garbled mess, mostly picking up her own dramatic gasps rather than anything remotely threatening. And the best part? You could hear her baiting me. Karen in an exaggerated, terrified voice. "Oh no, why are you coming toward me so aggressively?" Me off screen, clearly confused. "What? I'm literally just standing here." Karen still fake panicking. "You're scaring me. Stop yelling at me." "Me. I'm not yelling. Are you okay?" The video cut off abruptly, and I had to physically bite the inside of my cheek to stop from laughing. The younger officer let out a deep sigh and rubbed his eyes. "Ma'am, this doesn't prove anything." Karen's face turned a shade of red I didn't even know was possible. But you heard him. He was intimidating me." "He was," she floundered, realizing that literally no one was taking her side. The lead officer turned back to me. "Sir, I think we're done here. Sorry for the trouble." I nodded, relieved, but Karen wasn't finished. She screamed. "So you're just going to let him get away with this?" "I am a tax-paying citizen." The officers started walking away. "I will be filing a complaint," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "YORE. All corrupt." The older cop didn't even turn around. "Uh-huh. You do that, ma'am." And just like that, it was over. Karen stood there, vibrating with rage, watching as the cops got into their patrol car and drove off. The moment they were gone, she spun toward me so fast her sunglasses nearly flew off her face. This tide over. Her voice was so low and venomous, you would have thought I'd burned down her house instead of power washed my own. I let out a slow breath, nodding. "Yeah, I figured." She stormed off, slamming her door so hard that I actually heard a picture frame rattle inside her house. I should have felt victorious. I should have been relieved. But I knew better. Karen was not the kind of person to take a loss lightly. And I had a very bad feeling that her next move would be even worse. I should have known that Karen wasn't going to let this go. The cops had dismissed her nonsense. Her terrible video had been a total flop. And she had stomped back into her house like a cartoon villain, but somehow, I just knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat. No, she was the kind of person who would marinate in her anger and plot revenge. And I was right. Because 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. Now, at first, I thought it was just some junk mail. Maybe another HOA newsletter that I'd ignore since, oh yeah, we don't have an HOA. Not that Karen seemed to understand that. But when I looked at the envelope, my stomach dropped. The return address wasn't from some company. It was from a law office. I opened it, already feeling my blood pressure spike, and there it was. Karen was trying to sue me. I had to read the document 3 times to fully process the sheer audacity of it. According to her completely unhinged lawsuit, I had intentionally caused emotional distress by power washing my own property, engaged in public harassment by speaking rudely to her, created an unsafe living environment with my alleged use of hazardous chemicals, and my personal favorite, engaged in targeted intimidation. I had no idea what that even meant, but Karen made it sound like I was some kind of mafia enforcer, instead of just a guy trying to clean his damn porch. I read the letter again, then slowly sat down at my kitchen table, rubbing my temples. She's lost her mind, I muttered to myself. I immediately called my friend, Jake, who, thankfully, he's a lawyer. The second he heard the words Karen and lawsuit, he burst out laughing. "This has got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard," he said between chuckles. "Yeah, glad you're amused. Can she actually do this?" I asked, already exhausted. "No, absolutely not. It's ridiculous. But she can't waste your time by forcing you to respond." "Fantastic." Jake drafted a response, pointing out that Karen had no case whatsoever and that, if she actually pursued it, I'd counter-sue for filing a frivolous lawsuit. We sent it back to her precious little law office, and I hoped, that this would be the end of it. But Karen? Oh, Karen doubled down. The very next morning, I woke up to the sound of banging on my door. Not a normal knock. Not a polite "excuse me." No. This was the kind of banging that made you think you were about to be raided by the FBI. I threw on a shirt and opened the door, and there she was, standing on my porch like an avenging angel of suburbia, armed with a clipboard and an absolutely insane amount of smugness. Before I could even say anything, she thrust a stack of papers at me. "You have been served," she announced, like she was on a damn TV show. I stared at her, then at the papers, then back at her. "Are you Karen? Are you seriously suing me for cleaning my house?" She smirked. "I gave you multiple opportunities to apologize. You chose to be defiant." "Defiant?" I repeated, half laughing. "Karen, I was cleaning. You called the cops on me. They laughed you off the property." She raised her chin. "Well, we'll see what the judge thinks." I exhaled sharply. "All right, fine. Let's play this out. You want to sue me? Let's go to court." For a split second, I saw something flicker in her eyes: uncertainty. I don't think she actually expected me to fight back. She was probably banking on me panicking and trying to settle, or, at the very least, apologizing just to make her go away. But she had messed with the wrong guy. She huffed. "I look forward to seeing you in court." And with that, she turned on her heel and marched away, her clipboard clutched in her hands like some kind of suburban holy relic. I watched her go, resisting the urge to bang my head against the doorframe. This was beyond ridiculous. But, as I would soon find out, this was only the beginning. Because Karen? She wasn't done yet. If Karen thought she could intimidate me with her ridiculous lawsuit, she was about to get a rude awakening. The moment she flounced away from my porch, I did the only logical thing. I called Jake. "She actually served you?" Jake asked, and I could already hear the amusement in his voice. "Oh yeah. She looked like she had just won the Super Bowl," I said, rubbing my temples. "Please tell me this is going to get laughed out of court." "Oh, it absolutely will. But here's the thing: you actually have to show up, or she wins by default." "Fantastic." I sighed, leaning against my counter. "All right, let's destroy her." Hashtag the courtroom showdown. 2 weeks later, I found myself standing in an actual courtroom, staring at Karen across the aisle. She was smug, sitting there in her pastel blazer, tapping her perfectly manicured nails against the table like she was about to take down a criminal mastermind. Meanwhile, I was bored out of my mind. The judge, an older guy who looked like he'd seen every kind of nonsense imaginable, shuffled some papers before clearing his throat. "Miss Davenport, you are claiming the defendant," he looked at me, "Mr. my last name, engaged in harassment, property damage, and public endangerment?" Karen nodded so aggressively I thought her neck might snap. "That is correct, Your Honor." The judge turned to me. "And your response?" I sighed. "I was cleaning my porch." Silence. The judge slowly blinked. "Excuse me," I gestured with both hands. "I was power washing my porch." "That's it. She called the police, they found nothing, and now she's wasting the court's time." Karen gasped dramatically, clutching her pearl's eyes. Actual pearls. "He's lying. He was aggressive. He was endangering the entire neighborhood." The judge pinched the bridge of his nose. "Miss Davenport, do you have any actual evidence to support your claims?" Karen smirked, pulling out her phone. "I do, Your Honor. Video footage of his belligerent behavior. This will prove that I was a victim. She clicked play. And once again, I had to physically stop myself from laughing. Her terrible, edited video played on the courtroom monitor. And just like before, it was an absolute disaster. The footage was shaky, her voice was clearly faking distress, and at one point, she even zoomed in on my confused face as she shrieked, "Stop threatening me." The judge let out a slow breath. "Miss Davenport, this video does not show any evidence of wrongdoing." Karen froze. But. Additionally, the judge continued, now flipping through some documents, "I see here that the police were already called to the scene, and their report found no evidence of illegal activity." Karen's face went pale. "They were biased," she blurted out. "They didn't care about what he did to me. That's why I had to take this to court." The judge stared at her, then turned to me. "Mr. My last name, do you have any evidence to support your claim that you were, in fact, just cleaning your house?" I nodded, pulling out my own phone. "Yeah, actually. I have my doorbell camera footage. It recorded everything." Karen's soul left her body. I clicked play. There it was, the full unedited scene of Karen screaming at me, while I just stood there, holding a power washer, and looking bewildered. You could even see the moment she started filming herself, pretending to be terrified, while I literally just blinked at her. The judge watched in silence. Then he turned back to Karen. "Miss Davenport, I'm dismissing this case with prejudice," he said, voice utterly exhausted. "And I strongly suggest you do not attempt to use the legal system to harass your neighbors again." Karen's mouth fell open. "What? But Your Honor, case dismissed." The gavel banged. I stood up, stretching. Well, this was fun. Karen stormed out of the courtroom, before I could even finish the sentence. #the aftermath. I thought that was the end of it. I hoped that was the end of it. But Karen wasn't done yet. The next morning, I woke up to sprinklers going off in my front yard. Which would have been normal, except I don't have sprinklers. I stepped outside, and immediately noticed a garden hose running from Karen's house to my yard, flooding my lawn. She was trying to sabotage my property. I turned, and there she was, watching from her window. The second she saw me, she dove behind the curtains like a guilty child. I groaned, walking over to the hose and yanking it out of my yard. Then I pulled out my phone and snapped several photos. She wanted to play dirty? Fine. I called the cops. Again. 20 minutes later, a very familiar police officer knocked on my door. "Sir, one here, you've got a vandalism complaint?" I handed him my phone. "Yup." Caught her red-handed. He scrolled through the pictures, then sighed. "You've got to be kidding me." I crossed my arms. "You're telling me?" Karen denied everything, of course. She even tried to accuse me of stealing her hose. But once again, my doorbell cam footage showed her dragging it into my yard at 4 a.m. like a lunatic. The cops hit her with a fine for trespassing and property damage. And then, finally, she broke. A week later, a for sale sign went up in her yard. Karen was moving out. I watched from my porch, sipping coffee, as she packed up her things with pure rage on her face. She caught me watching. I smiled and waved. She flipped me off. And just like that, she was gone. Victory had never tasted so sweet. I thought it was finally over. I watched Karen's moving truck pull away, leaving nothing but an empty house and a faint smell of desperation in the air. I should have been celebrating. And for a while, I did. My lawn was safe from sabotage. My mornings were free from unsolicited HOA-style complaints. And the neighborhood had visibly relaxed without her lurking behind her blinds like some suburban cryptid. But, as I would soon learn, Karen wasn't the kind of person to accept defeat gracefully. The mysterious letters. A week after Karen's departure, I found an envelope stuffed into my mailbox. No return address. No postage stamp. Just my name, scrawled across the front in aggressive, unhinged handwriting. I opened it, already bracing myself for the nonsense inside. And, oh, it did not disappoint. "I know what you did." That was it. No explanation. No context. Just those 4 ominous words, like some kind of dollar store horror movie threat. I actually laughed. Was this a joke? Was she really sending anonymous threats like we were in some petty middle school drama? I crumpled the letter and tossed it in the trash. The next day, another one appeared. "You think you've won, but I'm not done." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "For the love of Karen, you moved. You lost. Go harass another neighborhood." But apparently, she wasn't done haunting my life just yet. Over the next 2 weeks I received a note that just said, "Watch your back, okay? Edgelord." Another that read, "I am always watching," which was especially hilarious considering she no longer lived anywhere near me. And, my personal favorite, "You will pay." For what? At this point, I decided to install a security camera on my mailbox, just to see if I could catch whatever deranged gremlin was delivering these notes. 3 nights later, I got my answer. Karen's midnight escapade. I woke up to my phone buzzing. Motion detected. Front yard. Groggy, I grabbed my phone and clicked into the live feed. And there she was. Karen. Standing dead center in my yard, staring directly into my camera. I nearly dropped my phone. Oh, hell no, she wasn't moving. She wasn't knocking. She was just standing there, dressed in all black, because apparently, she thought she was in a spy movie, holding what looked like another letter. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand and waved. I bolted upright, adrenaline spiking through my veins. This was no longer just petty revenge. This was full-blown, psychological horror movie nonsense. I threw on a jacket, grabbed my phone, and immediately called the police. By the time they arrived, Karen was gone, but my security camera had caught everything. A cop, the same one who had dealt with her hose stunt, let out a long, suffering sigh as he watched the footage. Man, what is wrong with this woman? If you figure it out, let me know. They took my statement, and I handed over the stack of insane letters she had left behind. One of the officers promised they'd check local motels to see if she was still lurking in the area. I tried to go back to sleep after they left, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over yet. And I was right. The final confrontation. The next morning, the police called me back. They had found her. She was living in her car, parked outside of an abandoned strip mall about 10 minutes away. Apparently, she had been driving back to the neighborhood at night to finish what she started. I had no idea what that meant, but I wasn't about to let her try anything else. The cops picked her up for trespassing and harassment, and that, as it turned out, was the final straw. Karen had out-Karened herself. With her history of false police reports, frivolous lawsuits, and general lunacy, the authorities decided she was officially a problem. She got hit with a restraining order, fines for trespassing, and according to the officers a strong recommendation to seek psychological help. And just like that, Karen was done. The aftermath after that night, the letters stopped. The threats disappeared. Karen, for the first time in months, was gone. A few neighbors even thanked me for finally getting rid of her. Apparently, I wasn't the only one she had harassed over the years. I was just the first one to fight back. One guy even brought me a gift basket, which contained a bottle of whiskey and a note that read, "For your bravery in the Battle of Karen. May she never return." I laughed so hard I nearly cried. And so, life finally went back to normal. My porch remained clean, my lawn remained sabotage-free. And for the first time in forever, I could step outside without fearing an unsolicited HOA lecture. Karen was gone for good. And I have never slept better.